Dad, we've been out here talking this morning about your granddaddy Reed, and last time I interviewed you, we didn't say quite as much about him, but tell me a little bit about Granddaddy and Grandma Reed, because I think you said that there might be some Indian descent there or something.
There was on Granddad's side. I think there's some Cherokee blood somewhere in his line. And I don't know just where they got together. Grandmother was raised in around Laura Bloomer, in that area in there. And she had a sister that was also in that area there. She married a McQueen. They were McCanns. And Grandmother Reed did a lot of midwife work. She'd go out to the various homes where people were. Of course, Granddad would go with her. And you know, at times of snow and bad weather and things like that, and help her. But she was, I guess, the main midwife around that section. And of course, she was in sickness and things like that. People needed her. But she took TB and was bedfast for a number of years and finally died with it.
Oh.
I can remember going to their house when I was just a youngster in Damascus, and you could hear her breathe on real days and that, from where you went in the gate at the bottom of the lot. She had it so bad, but Granddad stuck with her, and of course Uncle Albert and Aunt Maud lived with them at that time. They had moved to Virginia and bought a place near really called Alpharetta, and lived there for a number of years. But the thing was right on a creek, and they had a big cave back of the house, and it was kind of a damp location, which wasn't too good for conditions. Probably if they had gotten out and got in a different climate, she might have lived longer than she did, but I don't know.
And she was a McCann, and that's sort of, I think that's a Scottish name. I think we found that out, and
I think
probably
so.
Scotch-Irish or something like that. Now, how old were you when your family moved back to that area of Virginia to live? You'd have been a small boy, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I guess I was around a couple of years old, something like that, when we moved from Montana, I guess, to Chicago for a brief time, and then from there to Virginia. And I really don't know where they lived with Granddad there for a while until they bought in Damascus. I imagine so. But we lived in Damascus for quite a while when I was a kid, up till 1924. That's when Dad started to work for the railroad.
Now, do you remember any other relatives on your mother's side of the family that you met that came there? And
yeah, we had a lady that was called Fanny McCann. She was related to Mother's mother that lived in Damascus, and we used to go over there occasionally. And I don't think Fanny had ever married. She was I guess what they call spinsters in that day. She was a kind of loner and lived by herself.
Was there any other people that came? Would they have come from North Carolina or anywhere around that you can remember being kin to?
No, I don't. Grandpa had brother, I think it was, called Fayette Reed, that he came there occasionally. Now, I never did really know where he lived. I know he had one of those old steam thrashing machines that are outfits that they pull the thrashing machine with, and went from place to place and thrashed for people. I've seen him in that thing a time or two, moving from place to place. In fact, he used to stop at the house once in a while when he'd be around the Damascus area.
Now, your granddaddy Reed, you were telling me he was pretty much a jack of all trades.
Yeah, granddad can do most anything. He did a lot of veterinarian work for people around the community. If people would have sick stock or anything like that, they used to call on him. He could pretty well tell when he looked at the animal what was wrong with it, and he very seldom ever missed. Of course, they didn't have much to doctor with in those days, just kind of a crude setup on things. Probably a lot of stock could have been saved if they had the facilities they had today, but he saved a lot of stock for people in there. And then he did blacksmith work for people. He used to go out in the mountains and burn his own charcoal. They would dig these pits and put wood in it, set it on fire, and then they covered it up so that the wood didn't thoroughly burn. It what they call charred. That's where it got its name, I guess. And they used that in the blacksmith shops because they didn't have coal, to do with, and really it made a hotter fire. And he'd make his own charcoal for his forge, and he made wagon wheels, and in fact he could make the whole parts of the wagon. He didn't try to make whole wagons, but he would make parts for them, for the neighbors. And they'd buy this steel for the rims and long rods, and they'd heat that thing wherever they wanted to cut it, and they had a thing on the anvil that was sharp on the edge, and after they got hot, they'd put it across that wherever they was going to make the cut. And hit the thing until it came in two, and then they would heat the thing and bend it to get the circle on the thing, and it was surprising how almost accurate circle they could make as they heated that thing and bent it. And then after it was bent, they would weld it together on the anvil. Now, I was often wondered, they had some kind of white powder they poured on that thing where they made that weld where it went together. And I never did think about asking him what it was, but when he welded a piece together, it was there. It didn't come apart. We got ready to put it on the wheel. They would heat that thing again. They'd build a fire outside with wood and put that rim in it till it got hot. And then they'd put it down on the wheel because the parts of the wheel that held the spokes was made in pieces, and it was usually just a little bigger than the rim. And they put that down on there until it would fall over the rim part of the wood rim part of the thing. And of course, when it got cold, it would shrink up again, and it made it tight on there. And when their wheels would set for a while, and especially dry weather, they'd have to run them in a branch or a stream somewhere and let them soak for a while until those things would swell up again. Kind of kept the wheels from coming apart.
That sounds like a lot of hard work.
It was. He was a small man. He was slender, but he was strong as an ox through the shoulders and arms and that. I've seen him pick up some awful loads and put across his shoulder that I've ever seen. It seemed like he never phased. He would stand right straight up and go off with those things.
Now, you grew up well, you spent how many years around Damascus and Mountain City area?
Well, let's see, I guess I was born in 1919. I was 18 months old when they brought me to Chicago. And I guess from in the early 20s up through 24. Say about 21 to 24. About 3 years, something like that.
And then you moved on to Radford area, Radford, Virginia. Now your dad, while he lived in that area, he wasn't always working for the railroad. What was he doing?
Well, when he was in Damascus, he did carpenter work for people. He worked in West Virginia for a while and did carpenter work there. And he would, a lot of times people, when they were building a home, had someone build it for them. They would get him to read the blueprints, because a lot of the fellows were good carpenters, but they couldn't read a blueprint. And they would come to the house and get him to check what was going on, see that it was done right and that. It was just kind of odd jobs here and there that he kept going until he went with the railroad.
Now, how did he end up working for the railroad?
Well, they were reinforcing a train bridge up above the house, and had a foreman on the thing, just been made foreman of the job, that didn't know his bottom from what was going on. So he found out that Dad could read blueprints, and he come down there and asked him if he'd like to go to work for him. And he wanted to know the conditions and all that, and he just told him, I said, I can't read a blueprint. I said, I want you to come up there and read the blueprints and see that everything's done right. So while he was working there, the man that had been doing their sheet metal work in Radford had fallen off of a house and killed him, and he asked Dad if he would be interested in taking that work over. And they set up conditions if he furnished his machinery that they would give him regular work on the thing. So he went to work with him.
So let's tie it all together. You'd have to say that on both sides in your family, you had people as far back as you can remember who did a lot of trades type work,
Yeah.
carpentry and all of that type of stuff. And the boys in your family, let's see, there's you and Tom and Andy. That's correct, isn't it? Of those, of the three of you, did all of you do trades work at one time, or did?
Yeah, they could all. Tom was fairly good at carpenter work. He kept his house all maintained, did the things needed to do there. Andy built a lot of buildings and that around his house. He was good at anything like that. I guess John was in carpenter work too. He worked at the powder plant for a while when it was going on, and then he worked for a private contractor when after he was laid off there. He later on went with the Navy base in Norfolk, and he did mechanical work there.
Now, do you think that this background benefited you, and even though you became a minister, do you think that background benefited you?
Yeah. I've been sunk if I hadn't been able to go back to that at times, even when I was a minister, to kind of help out financially on the thing. And it really did.
Do you think that it enabled you to relate to the people you were ministering to as well?
Yeah, because we had a lot of craftsmen in the churches I worked on, there was surprisingly a number of carpenters that went to my churches and followed that trade, other trades too, mechanical trades and various things. Most of them were people that work with their hands. They weren't so much professional men other than teachers and that thing.
And you'd have to say too that at Max Creek, where you were so many years, that people really had more appreciation for somebody that wasn't afraid to get dirty and do hard work. Would that think that'd be fair?
That's the way I won the confidence of a lot of the people there, because they kind of thought when I came in the ministry there as a full-time minister that I would be like everybody else, run around with a necktie and a white shirt on all the time. But they found out when they needed something done that they could depend on me to do the thing for them. And it really made an impression on them.
Have you ever thought about the fact that, and I bet you have, because I have, that our own Lord was involved in carpentry, and he got his hands dirty, and he no doubt mashed his thumbnails, and I think people assign to him a lot of royalty, like he never got his hands dirty, but that's not true, is it?
No, he worked with his hands. His dad was a carpenter, and no doubt he did a lot of it to help him out. I've always figured that when he was at home, he applied himself to help out in any way he possibly could. He probably mashed his hand, but I don't guess he muttered to it like the marshal do.
Well, let's see. I had some other questions. I was trying to. I think of these things sometimes when I'm working, and mean to ask them. You're going back to Damascus area and all that. By the time you arrived there, were any of your family, brothers or sisters, married and gone from home?
No, they were all at home up to. We went up to Radford, and when we went to Radford, they didn't leave home until Granddad Marshall passed away, and Agnes first went to live with her a while, or John rather went first to live with her a while, and then Agnes lived with her a while. And John finally came back, but Agnes stayed in the Chicago area for a number of years and worked there.
Now that meant she was staying with her namesake, her grandmother Agnes Marshall.
Mm-hmm.
Now that would have been what, 1927 or somewhere around in there?
Along in 27, 28, somewhere along.
Somewhere in there. And so the girls there in your family,